Hello, croeso mawr. Welcome to our Conwy ParentTalk webinar. I'm Deborah Job and I work for the Family Centres and Family Life teams in Conwy. And if you don't already know about us and what we're able to offer you as a family, then please take a look at our website, www.conwy.gov.uk/family life. There's a short video there and lots of information. The focus for today's webinar is sleep, and in particular getting back into a sleep routine for the beginning of term. Now we know it's hard enough to get back into a routine after 6 weeks of the summer holidays, but it's even harder after this lockdown period, I'm sure. And so we have an expert with us today, Deborah Roberts, another Deborah, and I'm really pleased to introduce her to you. She works in Conwy and in Denbighshire as a sleep practitioner. So I expect we all need a little bit of help getting back into a routine for the beginning of term. But for now, I'm going to hand over to Deborah, and she's going to go through some really interesting stuff with us. Deborah, first of all, would you like to just tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yes, thank you. Thank you for inviting me as well today. My background is many years ago. It was in health visiting, and then the last 15 years supporting families with some behavioural difficulties. And then three to 4 years ago, was lucky enough to be sent on the training to be a sleep counsellor. And as having 2 children myself, and my daughter in particular had difficulties, it was really quite interesting, and I have to say it's transformed my sleep. So I'd like to share a few things today that I've learned over the last few years anyway.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah, I think it's going to be really useful for us all.
Okay, so I'm just going to talk a little bit about the science of sleep, because I think it's always helpful to know a little bit of theory and as to why kind of these messages are given, really. So it's my job to kind of share that evidence and that research and help parents to put it into place, to help the children sleep. So sleep, like it or not, we all need it, and we certainly couldn't manage without it. But as a society, we sleep less now than we used to do. So before Edison made his light bulb, we definitely slept more. And in the 1940s, apparently adults slept on average about 8 hours. And now, current day's practice, it's roughly about 6.5 hours. So it's quite a change, really. And a lot of that is down to light and technology and just the lives we live. Sleep problems are very common in children, 25% of children. Some research quotes even more, and I'm sure that's right. But the good news is that sleep problems are highly treatable, and many of them, most of them, are treated in a sort of behavioural way, just by us changing the way we manage them with routines and good routines and that kind of thing. So sleep is very dynamic in that we don't go to sleep and we're out for the count and we sleep like a log. There's quite a lot going on when we sleep. So physically, when we sleep, as you can see on the slide there, we have this thing called growth hormone, and so children, that increases the height in children and adolescents. But for an adult, obviously we don't grow, but it helps to increase our muscle mass. It repairs any cells that have been damaged in the day, helps reproductive organs, strengthens bones. So we all need sleep. It boosts the immune system, as you can see there. And that's a massive factor, because if we are sleep deprived and that immune system gets depleted, then it opens us up to be at risk of lots of infection and lots of illnesses. So it's quite important that on a long term that we're sleeping reasonably well. It also interestingly breaks down fat. So for any of you, as I have in the past, being on diets, trying to lose a bit of weight. If you're sleep deprived, the body kind of panics a bit and it tends to break down muscle rather than fat. So it's just useful to know. And also, we have two hormones that control our appetite. And one's called ghrelin, and that makes us feel hungry, and one's called leptin. And they sort of should be, you know, equally balanced. But if we're sleep deprived, we get too much hunger hormone going on. So we tend to crave anything, carbohydrates, we reach for the crisps and the biscuits, and children are the same. So there is a little link there, you know, to our weight. So what's going on in sleep with our emotional health? Well, when we sleep, we file all our memories from the short term into the long term. So in terms of children's learning, if they covered a topic in school, they might have covered something like, I don't know, the First World War, for example. When they're sleeping, the brain sorts all those memories out, files them in the appropriate cabinet, so the last time they kind of looked at that topic, and then it helps them to clear that space and go and learn the next day. It's crucial for brain development, and certainly new babies, they spend a lot of time in what we call the dream state sleep. Not quite sure what they might be dreaming about, but that's when the brain's really developing. And it sorts out the emotions from the day. So when we do dream, kind of emotions get sorted really. It's a bit like peeling an onion, and so that those powerful, strong emotions can be dampened down a bit. And it helps us to problem solve. So I don't know whether anybody's gone to bed thinking, can't do that, not quite sure how to do it. What was I doing? Putting my IKEA bookcase together, you know, with those wonderful instructions. And then the next day you get up and you think, oh, that's how it is, that's how you do it. So the brain's really clever at problem solving. And famous people like Paul McCartney, he came up with a couple of songs, Yesterday and Let It Be. He had those in a dream. And Shelley's Frankenstein, that was another one. So there's a lot going on when we're asleep. We're very creative, problem solving going on. So how do we feel when we don't get enough sleep? Certainly as teenagers and adults, we feel like the picture, I guess, most of the time. We feel worn out. We struggle to stay awake when it's quiet, so you might get children struggling in class. It's hard to concentrate, and we're a bit more accident prone. We can be grumpy. And also for lots of children, their behaviour becomes a little bit more difficult, because what happens when we're sleep deprived is the front part of the brain, the prefrontal cortex, it controls our emotions and it moderates our behaviour. That kind of gets knocked out when we're sleep deprived. So our behaviour can become a little bit more erratic, and we see this a lot in children. Our mood can be affected, and interestingly, for small children, they can become almost the opposite. They can get a little bit hyperactive, and I know lots of organisations that kind of deal with ADHD, for example, are really keen to get children sleeping, because it then becomes a bit bi-directional in that you're not sure if it's lack of sleep or if it's you know, other things going on. Also, which is sad in a way, that when we are sleep deprived, the brain thinks it's the norm. It just gets to kind of think this is the way it is. So it ticks along and doesn't give us those alerts. So we need to be mindful of that. So how much sleep do we need? Well, newborn babies need 18 hours there. So right across the span there to adults needing between 7 and 8. And that does vary. So as you can see, there's a band in there. So in terms of adults, I think it's Roger Federer that sleeps about 9 hours a night, because when we're sleeping, we get that restorative sleep, which helps them to perform better. And children 5 to 12 years, for example, they might need 9 hours. Some children might need 11 hours. So we're all different. So it's hard to say my child's 6 and it needs X amount of hours. It varies from person to person. So when we do sleep, this is what it looks like. We call this a hypnogram, and all it is really is the sleep cycles that we go through. So when we first go to bed and we drift off to sleep, we go into that first dip, and that's the deep sleep, the nice restorative sleep. And when we're in that deep sleep, the body's fixing itself, the growth hormone's being produced, and it's hard to wake us, to be quite honest. And that's when some children might sleepwalk, sleep talk, that kind of thing goes on there. And then after the deep sleep, we come up to the little red bit there called REM, rapid eye movement, and all that is our dream state sleep. So then we have a little bit of a dream where the brain, you know, is sorting out all the memories and the emotions, and then we go back into a deep sleep again. And interestingly, you can see little blips there where we come back up to a wake state, and that's just evolutionary. We call those partial awakenings. So we all do it, and what we want to do is to just be able to turn over and go back to sleep again. However, if the environment's different in any way, and I can use the example of my daughter. I used to give her a last feed, rock her to sleep, then I'd carry her upstairs and I'd put her in a cot, and then she would wake up there, partial awakening, and she'd be looking around thinking, hang on, I didn't fall asleep here. And then she would need me to come back in and replicate that. I would have to give her a rock, give her another drink, and put her in a cot. So I hadn't taught her really to self-settle. And that's quite common. And as the night goes on, those deep sleeps get less and less, and the dreams sort of get longer and longer. Babies' cycles there, if you can see, they're much shorter, so they can wake up much more often, as we all know, those of us that are parents. And what controls it all is our body clock. And this controls, they call it circadian rhythm. So every organ in your body has its own little rhythm going on, and it controls all our body functions, including our eating, our digestion, sleep. When we're sleeping at night, we're not meant to be digesting food, so all the internal organs get busy repairing themselves because that's what's supposed to happen at night. And we reset this body clock every day, mainly by light, and also by regular meals and regular routines. Because if we were left in a cave without any windows, our body clocks would run slightly over 25 hours. So, and again, it varies from person to person. So some people love to get up early in the morning. Some people are more the night owls, and they like to go to bed a bit later, get up a bit later. And most people are in the middle there. Teenagers, they sometimes have a problem with the body clocks because they could shift a bit later, so they do struggle to get to sleep a little bit more. But with, you know, help and daylight, that kind of thing, we can help them to reset it. So light is the most important thing that helps to reset the body clock, and it goes in through the eyes. We've got special cells at the back of the eye, and it tells the brain that it's getting light or it's getting dark, depending on what time of the day. So in the evening, the light starts to fade, and the brain knows that's happening, and it sets the scene for sleep. So it starts to produce a sleep hormone called melatonin, and what melatonin does is it sets the scene for us to go to sleep. In the morning, when the light starts as well, even if you've got your eyes shut, these special cells can still detect the light. The brain starts to kick in with the other hormone called cortisol. So this is a little graph of what happens. So in the day, we've got quite high cortisol, and cortisol is a stress hormone, so we don't want that to be too high, but it does keep us awake. And then in the evening, it starts to dip, and our sleep hormone kicks in, and then that sets the scene for sleep. And hopefully off we go to sleep. Now, sleep is a two-phase process, and this is only one of those phases. I'll talk about the other in a second. So a quick slide there just to show you teenagers, adult circadian rhythms. On average, they're the blue lines, and teenagers are a little bit later there. So we mustn't beat them too much in terms of the sleep habits. So what does reduce that sleep hormone that we need to produce to go to sleep? It sets the scene for sleep, but we do interfere with it quite a lot. And the main thing is light. So we have lights on in the house, and also lights that are given off from these gadgets that you see here, the TV, laptops, tablets, Xboxes, mobile phones. They give off a lot of light, and there's a particular wavelength of light called blue light that goes kind of straight to the part of the brain that produces the sleep hormone, and it just stops it in its tracks. So that causes difficulty. And the other thing that stops the sleep hormone from working effectively is if we're stressed. And so, you know, while we've been in lockdown and things are changing all the time, lots of people have had difficulties with the sleep because that stress hormone has been a little bit raised. But the rise of digital technology has been a massive factor in reducing that sleep hormone.
Deborah, can I just ask then, before you move on, with it being at this time of year, it's coming to the end of summer, isn't it? And we want to try and get back into routine now for the beginning of the school term. It's not really getting dark, is it, until about 9 o'clock? What can we do to help with that?
Yes, yeah. Well, I guess try and make the house as dark as you can, really. Pull the curtains to. I always say dim the lights, you know, turn the main lights off, have a nice low light throughout the whole house, really, not just in the bedroom, just to start that process of melatonin being produced, that sleep hormone, and also it cues children in. So it's part of that bedtime routine, like it's curtains are shut, lights are dimmed. The brain then starts to associate that with kind of going to bed and eventually going to sleep. But yeah, and LED lights, although they take less electricity, they are the worst for keeping us awake. So we need to be mindful of that. Even you could have a big LED light outside your bedroom window, and that sometimes gets in the way. So you know, blackout blinds are really quite handy. Hope that's okay. So just briefly about sleep pressure, because this is the thing that kind of sends us to sleep, and we don't really talk about it too much. It just builds up throughout the day, and it's a chemical that builds up in the brain, a bit like a pressure cooker, gets to the point where we just go to sleep. And this is where caffeine can affect it. Caffeine blocks that from working. So caffeine, especially for teenagers and adults as well, with the high energy drinks and the Coca-Cola and the tea and the coffee, it can get in the way. Caffeine stays in our body for many, many hours. If you have a mug of coffee, 10 o'clock in the morning, by 10 o'clock at night, you've still got a quarter of that caffeine in your system. And it not only blocks the sleep, it also reduces the quality of sleep. So it's worth thinking about, really. Little children don't tend to drink too much caffeine, but things like Lucozade and stuff, like, you know, I wasn't aware that had caffeine in, so it's always worth checking the label. So good bedtime practice. Well, routine is key, really. The routine provides that kind of ritual which helps children with that transition from the sort of wake playtime to going to bed, going to sleep. It's a sequence of behaviours, and we will have to learn how to go to sleep. And the brain kind of knows what's coming next when you've got that routine in place. Children love visual instructions, so you know, reward charts with pictures are great for children. They love that sort of thing. But routine is key. Getting back into that routine, I'll talk about that in a sec. Also thinking about the bedroom, because we don't tend to think about the bedroom. And certainly when I was little, it was many years ago, it was pretty cold to be in your bedroom, so you tended to just sleep in there. Whereas now, children play in the bedroom, and it can be an area of fun. But if children are struggling to sleep, then having that room as a sleep room rather than a playroom can help until the sleep is sorted. So if you can't move the toys out, you know, put them away, cover them over, so they're not a distraction. Some children can fixate on detail, on little things, so covering them up does help. Also keeping the room cool and as dark as possible, like we mentioned before with the dark, but keeping it cool because the body needs to be cool to go to sleep. It can't sleep very well when it's really hot. Having the bed comfy, making sure you've not got your nocturnal hamster running around on the hamster wheel, and if you can, not having any TVs or electronic devices in the bedroom, certainly when we're trying to help children to get back into a routine, because like we said before, the light and the stimulation from what those gadgets give off also affects sleep. And avoiding naps as well in the day, particularly after 2 o'clock. So bedtime routine, this is just an example where we might start with the TV there, so turning the gadgets off, turning all those electronic gadgets off, and then it sort of becomes that wind down hour, or however long you want to have it really. Some children like supper, and if you do have supper, dairy products are really good because they convert eventually to produce melatonin. Quiet play, which is anything other than running around like a whirlwind or being on the electronic gadgets. So jigsaws are good, puzzles are good, colouring, Lego, anything that's just considered to be quiet. Having a bath or a shower or a wash is really helpful, because having a nice warm bath, it does help then to cool the body down from the inside. Having a story, or for older children, reading a story themselves. For teenagers, maybe some relaxation techniques in there, and then saying night-night. Also, ending the day on a positive note. There's a lot of research now that if we end the day on a positive note, give praise at the end of the day, that children do sleep better. So something as simple as that. For older children and teenagers, light is really important, to get out into natural light for at least 30 minutes in the morning if possible. So as we know, teenagers' body clocks shift back a bit, and in lockdown we might not have been out as much as we would have been, because daylight resets that body clock. It's really important. If you go out on a dull day, you get 5,000, it's called lux, we just measure light in lux. If you go out on a sunny day, you get 100,000 lux, but if you're indoors, you're lucky if you get about 300. It's much, much less. And so the brain doesn't have that difference between bright light and the dark. Some research has shown that if we get out into the daylight every day, every morning, then we fall asleep on average in 18 minutes, which is great. And if you don't get outdoors at all for any light exposure, it takes much longer, on average 45 minutes. So light is quite a good treatment really for helping children to sleep. Avoiding drinks with caffeine, like we've mentioned before. Avoid having naps. Don't lie in at the weekend if possible. I think that this is a sort of teenage adult thing really, because what happens when we lie in is we put our body into like a jet lag, and it's just harder then, on Monday mornings to get up again, and it just confuses the body clock a wee bit. So it's good to get children back into a routine before they start school now, if you can kind of have pretty much the same bedtime and certainly getting up time as much as you can. Exercise, that's also good. Not too close to bedtime though, because it kind of revs up the metabolism and makes our bodies a bit too hot. And having a good meal again, but not too close to bedtime. So that last wind down hour, where we want to switch off our TVs, computers, mobiles, anything with a screen, and then have a bath, have a wind down, chill out, read or listen to relaxing music. Teenagers are quite into the music. Stick as closely as you can to a bedtime and a wake time. That wake time is the most important time to be consistent, and it resets that body clock that goes a little bit skew-with, and also a regular bedtime would help as well. And try some relaxation techniques. That's always helpful. Breathing techniques there, as the picture shows. They're pretty good for helping us to get to sleep. So before school starts now, we need to be thinking of getting back into that routine, because our brains do love predictability. Children love routine. We like routine as well. Begin with a set wake-up time if possible. If you've got teenagers and they're used to going to bed at 12 and not getting up till dinner time, you can shift it back slowly, bedtime and wake time. So you do that by shifting it back 15 minutes every couple of nights, 2 or 3 nights, because if you suddenly start going to bed at 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, it's really difficult to get to sleep because our brains have been used to falling asleep much later. So you do it gradually. It's kind of like, well, it would be me. So I go to bed about 10:30. It would be like me trying to go to bed at 6:30, 7 o'clock. I just wouldn't be able to fall asleep. But for smaller children, they tend to get up early anyway. Stick to the same wake time as best you can. And having that routine where they know what's coming next, that transition to bedtime. Think about the light and think about the temperature. Dim the lights in the evening, like we said before. And as I say, for teenagers, they might want to shift the times gradually, both times. But for younger children, get your morning time set. And then if they're used to going to bed at 10 o'clock, what you can do is you can gradually move that back by 15 minutes every couple of nights. And it just helps the brain to readjust rather than doing it all at once, if that makes sense. Does that make sense?
It does, yeah.
If anybody wants any handouts, there's more stuff on them, isn't there? All this is on the handouts. Dim the lights in the evening. And that's it, really. That's a little bit of sleep theory and sort of getting back into routines, hopefully for school. And if anybody, does have any queries, the school nurse is certainly the best to go to, or the family worker in Conway, and they can support or direct people in to the sleep clinic if they want any further help.
Fantastic, thank you so much, Deborah. That's been really interesting. We have got 1 or 2 questions, if that's okay, just to put you on the spot a little bit there. One is, can you give an example of a breathing technique?
It depends on the age of the child, really. So for little children who don't kind of understand that, so when we breathe in slowly and then we breathe out slowly, it's that breathing out that reduces the stress hormone, reduces the adrenaline. But little children don't kind of understand that. So what we do is we think of things like, we call it smell the rose, blow out the candle. So we would just imagine they could have something in the hand, pretend it was a rose, and then they breathe it in slowly, and then they blow out the candle, and they have to pretend that that the candle's at a distance, so they blow it out slow, not like a birthday candle where they go, so they blow the candle out slowly like that. So what we have to do is we practice that really every night, so that when they are struggling, they've got it at the fingertips. So that's really helpful for younger children. One parent did smell the chocolate and blow out the candle because her child loved chocolate. And for older children, or teenagers as well, it's just that kind of mindful breathing. And again, we've got handouts if anybody wants them, where you breathe in slowly and you breathe out slowly. Sometimes you can breathe into the count of 4, hold it for 4, breathe out for the count of 4. There's different techniques really, but it is about that slow breath. And if anybody's looked at mindfulness, that's useful to look at. You kind of think about where that breath might be going, or you think about your belly, and it blocks out all those other thoughts and just helps you to breathe and help to reduce that stress. And especially if you wake in the night, if you just kind of think about that breathing, then it's really helpful.
Brilliant, thank you. That's we'll give that a go this evening, I think. I've got another question here. Should I focus on sorting the wake time first or the sleep time?
The wake time first, definitely. The wake time is the most important time to get right. That resets the body clock, and then it helps to build up that pressure, that sleep pressure, so that the night time should fall into place. But like I say, if they've been used to going to sleep much later, don't worry about that being the same at the moment, and just bring it gradually back, but concentrate on the wake time. Yeah, definitely. And we've got, how many weeks do we got now? A couple of weeks, 2 or 3 weeks. So we could, you could always bring that wait time back gradually if you wanted to, or you could just go for, whatever time that might be when you're back at school. You know your child really, And they will be tired to begin with, but that's all part and parcel of it really.
Another question then, my child suffers from anxiety and can't get to sleep. What can I do to help her?
So with anxiety, that's with quite small children, there are a couple of percent of small children do struggle with anxiety, and certainly during lockdown that's been aggravated, hasn't it, by what we've seen on the news and what's going on in general, wearing masks in shops and as we do in England. So anxiety, when we're anxious, we push up that cortisol, that stress hormone, and that kind of doesn't help with going to sleep. So there's apps that you can look at. There's some free apps that do like mindfulness, meditation, and some of them you have to pay for. Calm is one that you have to pay for, but I have found a free one, so if anybody wants more information, get back to me, Deborah, on that one.
Okay.
So relaxation, mindfulness, kind of meditation type thing. Exercise is really good to bring down the stress hormones, but not too close to bedtime. So that's worth thinking about. And when children get back to school, they'll be out much more as well. They'll be out exercising, running around, so that should help. Those breathing techniques, that can help with anxiety. But if parents are concerned, then again, the school nurse or the family worker will have some basic tips to help with anxiety. Anxiety is the fear of what's not happened yet, isn't it, really? So we can model, staying calm. We can model being positive. It won't be like this forever. We'll all be fine. We model that as parents, and that's probably quite significant as well.
And I expect for some children, it's the going back to school that they might feel anxious about. And we've actually got another couple of webinars that the education psychologists have done for us in Conway around preparing your child, I suppose, or supporting your child emotionally on their return to school. So we will put the link for that out as well, so that you can access that webinar as a good one, and it looks in a little bit more detail around things like anxiety.
Good, yeah, sounds good.
Okay, another question then. My friend's child has melatonin to help him sleep, which I'm guessing is some sort of form of medication that gives them that hormone that you were talking about earlier. Is that something that people can get? Is that something I can get?
Yeah, well, I did look this one up, melatonin, because it's changing all the time. But melatonin is the sleep hormone that we produce, and it's not licensed for use in children. It's only licensed for use in over 55s that have insomnia. And what happens with melatonin is it just kind of sets the scene for sleep. But what they found in terms of the research, sorry to have to look here, is that it helps on average by about 20 minutes. Some researchers suggested 30 minutes with sleep, but then they found that the children wake up earlier by 17 minutes. So it's certainly not the first line of treatment, and it's been shown to be helpful for children that have got quite severe neurodevelopmental disorders. Otherwise, the clinical evidence is quite poor. So it's something that maybe used to be prescribed, and now they know more about it. It's not as easily prescribed. It does have side effects actually as well. It can upset our digestive system. It can cause constipation, nausea, headaches. It can make children more agitated, which would increase their anxiety and disrupt their behaviour. So it is only used in extreme cases. Yeah.
So what you would recommend really would be to concentrate on the routine and the behaviour stuff before going down the medical route.
That's right. So yeah, and if there was any issues, then the paediatricians tend to refer families into the sleep clinic first for us to work together really. help with any sleep problems.
Brilliant. So one last question then, and this is about the teenagers, which is always interesting, isn't it? It's my teenager won't part with his phone, and I imagine this is quite a common problem, and he takes it to bed every night, and I don't know what to do.
Oh, it's so difficult, isn't it, teenagers, because it's just part of their lives, isn't it? That's all they know, really. I think the first step, and I have done a little leaflet for teenagers to help them to understand, is if they understand why that's a difficulty, then maybe that might help them to part company with the phones. So we know that the light affects the sleep hormone. We know it's stimulating. It's hard to turn off those notifications because they're created to be addictive, aren't they? They give us that dopamine hit. So I think the first step is helping them to understand why it's probably not helpful to take the phone to bed. And then just having house rules, really, and including teenagers in that. I know it's not always easy, but and modelling it as parents. We put our phones on the kitchen table before we go to bed, and so they can do the same, so that everybody in the house is doing the same. It's really hard for teenagers to part companies with the phone, and although they'll say, "Oh, I cover it over," I put it at the other end of the room, it's a massive temptation, isn't it? So ideally, really, to keep them out of the room, but helping them to understand why, because it just, like we said before, it affects the quality of sleep, not just when they go to sleep. And there's nothing worse than sitting in class feeling absolutely exhausted and just wanting to go to sleep. Yeah.
I think the modelling thing is actually really important, isn't it? And it's something that I've done recently. I've got younger children, and I don't want them to think that I'm addicted to my phone at this point, because when they get their own phone, I want them to have a healthy relationship with that phone. But if they're seeing mum and dad on their phone all the time, then that won't help, really, will it? So we've bought a little old-fashioned alarm clock and a little torch, so that we don't need our phones next to the bed. We can see the time by looking at the clock instead. So I think things like that, getting into that routine at an earlier stage rather than at the age where you're thinking of getting a phone for your child, could help as well, just to set the right routine from the beginning.
It's the same with technology in the bedroom as well, isn't it? Because I recently bought myself a new mattress, and when I went into the bed shops, beds have spaces now at the foot of the bed, TVs to go, which kind of encourages us to have TVs in the bedroom. But if I knew then, when my children were teenagers, what I know now, they definitely wouldn't have had a TV in the bedroom. But it was modelling that as well can certainly help, not having it on when we're in bed, especially if our little ones aren't sleeping too well. So it's having the whole house, isn't it, doing the same, really. Yeah.
Well, fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Deborah. That's been really, really interesting. And I hope it's been helpful to those of you who were taking part live, and for those of you who'll be watching the recording back as well. And if any of you want to talk more about what's been presented today, then please feel free to get in touch with us. You can get our contact details on the website, conwy.gov.uk/family life. And if you would like a little bit more input from Deborah with the sleep clinic, then you can either get in touch with our teams, the family centre teams, or you can perhaps ask your school nurse as well, and you can get access to that support in that way. But for now, thank you ever so much, and please do get in touch if you'd like anything else, and all the best with putting all of this into practice over the next couple of weeks. Thank you, Deborah.
Thank you. Thank you.